All right, SEC Insider Hit this morning, brought to you by Bank Plus. It's more than a name, it's a promise. They proved that time and again throughout the pandemic. We're live in the Bank Plus studio. Out of bounds, ESPN 105.9 The Zone. WRKS, we're going to the Farm Bureau Insurance call-in line. Welcome in our friend Dole from Jackson/Meridian. Dole, what's up, buddy?
How are you, Bo?
I'm good, man. What's happening?
Man, just enjoying the day, doing a little work, enjoying the show. Looking forward for you and Blake coming over to maybe possibly have a little wrestler sometime soon and talk a little recruiting.
I'm in.
Let's do it. No, I was just going to say that, I think Lane coming in at the time, just like with Leach, was against an uphill battle. We had negative momentum and State had positive momentum, and so I think that's where you see the difference in the two recruiting. Since 16 we've been in the negative as a program, and I think it's just going to take a little more time for him to turn that ship around. He's 35 with this last class. I think he'll be, like Blake said, in the top 25 after this class, and then after that he's got to get in the top 15 going forward if he wants the program to get to where he wants it to be. So just my opinion.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see how it goes. Thanks for the call, bud. I appreciate it, Dole.
Yes, sir.
No, I mean, that's a good point. It's been a tough stretch for Ole Miss since 2015 Sugar Bowl. That 2016 will always be a head scratcher. 2016 team will be a head scratcher for me. I was in Oxford the day they played Bama, beating them by 3 touchdowns just a couple weeks before, smoking Florida State. I mean, they were still a loaded football team. Just some things started to unravel. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see if Lane can put together a top 25 class here over the next 6 months. What all the assistants can do and so on. There's a lot of guys off the board though already. So I don't know, but I no way I could run the numbers on that. It'll be some serious work, but I guess with enough switches, you make it happen. We're going to go to the Miller Lite guest line. Welcome in Steve Robertson. Genespage.com, 247 Sports, Hailstate Insider, talk a little recruiting. Well, or grad transfer portal type stuff. And you can watch the show on our YouTube channel, search Out of Bounds Sports. All right, Steve, let's start with the big news this week. Tell our listeners everything you know about the new Alabama wide receiver that has now Shavers that is now transferred and enrolled and signed and everything else with Mike Leach in Mississippi State.
Okay, cool. Terrell Shavers obviously was a 4-star recruit out of Texas, and Mississippi State was actually one of his first offers coming out of high school, and felt like State had a good chance with it back then. And then the kid goes to camp at Alabama, and the rest, as they say, is rock and roll history. He went to camp over there and impressed and ran really well. And, it's at that time, I guess he was around 6'5" and about 185, 90 pounds. And, kid looked good out there running pass routes, goes to Alabama. His production on the college level has not matched his projection or his potential. And that's the one thing you look at right now. It's okay, there's no red flags behavior-wise. He's a very intelligent kid. He graduated high school a semester early. He's already earned his college degree in 3 years. And so we've reached out to our Alabama people and said, hey, there's really not any issues with this kid. He just, he got behind on the depth chart a little bit and just kind of wants to reboot his career. And then over the weekend, we began to kind of get some steam that, hey, this is probably a good thing for Mississippi State. It's down to probably Mississippi State, TCU, and Texas. Baylor was kind of an early favorite, but began to kind of get some intel that suggested he really wanted to stay in the SEC, that he really wasn't looking to go home to Texas. And then it was like within about 12 hours, it went from, okay, State's in it, State's lead school, okay, he's done. He's absolutely committed, and he'll report officially with the new signees in July, but they'll start kind of matriculating in a little bit later this month and join up in voluntary workouts in anticipation of the 2020 football season.
Okay, so I'm sorry, I missed it. Blake was yelling at me. Is he on campus?
No, not yet. No, not yet. He was officially announced yesterday as a signee, which is how these things go. You know, like when a kid announces that he's transferring and everything's on board, you go ahead and announce him as a signee, which is what State did yesterday. And so then he's still at home in Texas, and he's got a lot to handle. He's got to get his living situation arranged. So it'll take some time to get all that done, and then he'll make the move to Starkville and then enroll for July summer school classes. But he will join for workouts a little before then.
Okay. All right. You mentioned that Mississippi State offered him too in 27, or maybe even before that, Steve, in high school?
Yeah, it was the spring of his junior year. Yeah,
and so
spring of his junior year, State offered him.
All right. Well, Billy Gonzalez, so that would have been Billy or someone, I don't know who would that have been on staff, because Gonzalez took a beating, he and Hevesy, as far as not really wanting to drive more than 20 minutes to recruit. Was it, you talked to the Alabama 247 guys. Was it true that Saban around 2014, Steve, started asking his assistants, not on many players, but a handful of players that Mississippi State was getting, why are we not signing some of those players? In other words, I think that Saban admired the way that Mullen evaluated and some of the guys that he was finding that were turning out to be all SEC players and first, second, or third round draft picks. You see where I'm going there?
Sure. The first question I'll answer for you is that the offer initially, Mississippi State saw him at a satellite camp, back when that was a big thing, when all the coaches could get on a plane and fly over. And so they went to a satellite camp, and they saw him, and that's when State first had a chance to lay eyes on him, and then he impressed that day, and that's what led to the offer. That was kind of one off the beaten path a little bit. State didn't recruit the state of Texas a whole lot under Dan Mullen. But the second part of your question, Jody Wright's a good friend of mine, and he was at Alabama back then. Jody's moved on to the National Football League now. He's with the New York Giants. But he had shared multiple times with me about what a great job Dan Mullen and his staff did evaluating and projecting kids, and then having a chance to get them on campus and develop. And there were some kids that they had an early gong on, at the end, listen, hey, we're not going to sign this kid if we don't think he becomes much. And he goes to Mississippi State and ends up being, a pro football player, a guy that really contributed. So, yeah, there was some of that. I don't know if Saban perhaps made a directive about it or began to evaluate those kids closer. But Jody Wright told me many times that the staff at Alabama was very, very, very respectful and had a great deal of respect for how Dan Mullen did things as far as evaluating players and then having a plan for their development at Mississippi State.
How close was sometimes, there's so many recruiting rumors. How close or was Mississippi State to getting a commitment from Jalen Hurd before Kiffin and Saban got involved?
Very, very, very close. Matter of fact, Brian Johnson, who was the quarterback coach at Mississippi State at the time, played for Jalen Hurd's father in Texas, and Jalen Hurd was actually the ball boy on Friday nights when Brian Johnson was a quarterback. That's how close they were. And so there was a lot of discussion early on that Jalen was going to be the quarterback at Mississippi State. And then, State kind of slow played it a little bit. Next thing you know, then the water got pretty deep in Alabama, and you give Lane Kiffin credit for that. Lane kind of personally identified that kid as a guy he felt like would be their quarterback and be very successful. And there was a lot of discussion that the kid was going to commit to Mississippi State. He wanted to go to a couple more camps so he could be sure about things, and he went to Alabama. And when kids go to Alabama and Alabama wants you, it pretty much ends the deal. And that's kind of what happened in that situation. State was never really in it again. Once Alabama gave the kid, a committable offer, his recruitment was over.
Okay. Interesting. That was a heck of a pickup. An evaluation by Kiffin. Steve Robertson, Hailstate Insider, genespage.com on the Miller Lite guest line. So Shavers comes in. How would you kind of describe this wide receiver unit now? They've added some pieces. They've added JUCOs. They've redshirted a couple of guys. There's just a lot more dudes in the room. Is there a lot more talent and athleticism in the room?
Yeah, well, one certainly hopes so. And, when you begin to break it down, Bo, you mentioned the red shirts and everything else, you're basically could potentially have 10 new faces in the wide receiver rotation this year. Now, you've got some freshman guys that are likely redshirt this year, but they're, at this point, those decisions haven't been made. You mentioned Quentin Torber and Keziah Pruitt redshirted a year ago, and so they'll have an opportunity to play this year. Then you signed 5 kids last year, including 2 junior colleges. Now you've added 2 grad transfers in Jeff Banks and Terrell Shavers, and you got Trip Wilson. And most years, Sylvester Kroom and Dan Mullen would have signed that kid. This is one of those guys, too. You're kind of getting the benefit of a preferred walk-on from a kid that, had some options and had some scholarship offers, but wanted to play SEC football in his home state and elected to walk on to Mississippi State rather than Ole Miss. And so, you've got some guys in there that could be some real dudes. And so when you think about the ingredients required to run this scheme, I think you and I have discussed it many times, where State has really lacked is they've been wide receiver poor. And so the best way to fix a problem is to throw people at it. So they got, 8 brand new guys coming in this year to go with 2 guys that redshirted a year ago. So that entire personnel group is going through a complete overhaul.
This isn't usually what Mississippi State does, Steve. They don't usually win the KJ Costello, the Scott Lashley, the Shavers. These are big names. Who knows how they're going to play out, although I think Costello could be outstanding. Mike's just too good, and the kid's already proven that he's really, really, really talented. Do you just chalk this up as Mike Leach is the air raid, and now he's got this resume from Michael Crabtree to Gardner Minshew? What's your take on it?
Well, I think one of the things and let's be blunt about it, Washington State is arguably the worst job in the Power 5.
Right.
They have the smallest budget in the Power 5. They are the most remote outpost in the Pac-12. When all those kids get on a bus in the summer and they go visit Oregon State, and Washington, they don't go to Pullman, Washington. It's very difficult to get to. Doesn't have a natural recruiting footprint. So if they don't have a handful of kids out of Spokane that become Division I prospects, there's really not anybody in your backyard that you say, okay, that's our pipeline. That's just not how it is. And so now Mike Leach is here, and he's been a mad scientist with a bunch of kids that nobody wanted and won a lot of football games. Well, now the recruiting footprint, the available talent around him is more plentiful than it's ever been at any point in his coaching career. And so I think that's really what you're seeing now, is you're seeing the benefit of Mike Leach's career path, that he has learned along the way to do more with less. And now he's able to get a little more. Now he's able to appeal to a different brand of athlete because he's in the Southeastern Conference. And not to mention the fact, too, Mississippi State's made a real commitment facility-wise in recent years, and a lot of that is attributed to Dan Mullen and Scott Strickland. And I think you got guys like John Cohen and Mike Leach that are benefiting from those decisions and that commitment that Dr. Keenum made early in his tenure at Mississippi State, that we're going to be serious about football. And so now I think Mike Leach is one of those guys that he's going to be able to shop in some different grocery stores than he did, at Spokane, Washington, and Lubbock, Texas.
That's a good point. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show. Blake?
Yes, Steve, how much, if any, is Steve Spurrier Jr. leading the way on not only Shavers, but on kind of revamping the wide receiver room and concept, and what impact does him being not only a Spurrier, but having coached in this area before, how big an impact is that for Leach in this early recruiting period?
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Dave Nichols, another guy too. Dave's a single guy that's kind of in love with recruiting, and so it's kind of been that tandem effort. But you mentioned Spurrier. Obviously, he's got a name that's known nationally, but he also recruited and coached Alshon Jeffrey, at South Carolina. So this is a guy that knows the great wide receiver when he sees him and knows how to get the most out of him. And so I think that's a real factor in all this too. It's like, it's not a promise. You know what I'm saying? It's not to say, hey, here's what we're going to do for you. It's like, okay, well, here's what we did with Alshon Jeffrey, and here's what we did with Gardner Minshew. And those guys are obviously in the National Football League. So it's not about, hey, these are our plans. Look, this is our path. This is what we've done. And so we have that same vision for you. And I think that people are receptive to that. There's so many people that had all this negative perception of, oh, Mike Leach just can't recruit. He's had to recruit at 2 of the most difficult jobs in the country. And so now he comes to a place where, and listen, it ain't easy to win in Mississippi State, but the talent that's available to you in this region is 10 times what these guys are used to.
No doubt. Yeah. All right. Steve Robertson on the Out of Bounds Show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. Blake, do you have another one?
I was going to say, any word on Shadarius Townsend, the latest now second transfer out of Alabama?
Now you're getting greedy. All right, Steve?
Yeah, so all right, so it's funny you ask. I actually inquired about that yesterday. I'm going to write an article a little bit later today, but that there's a possibility with him, but the risk you run right now is, number one, you're already at 83 scholarships. Okay, so somebody would have to leave. You'd have to have some natural attrition. State does have one spot left in their 25 annual limit for 2020. So if somebody else leaves, you do have room there for one other guy. The risk you run, though, is you already signed a handful of junior college guys. You've added a couple of grad transfer guys. And so you don't want to get out of balance by getting too many two-year guys that could probably put you in a little bit of a talent valley in a couple of years when those guys leave the program. And so that's kind of the decision Mississippi State's got to make now is, okay, do we really want to add another two-year guy when we already have a pretty big junior class? And we're going to add to that, and it's going to be difficult for us to kind of make that ground up. Like if you have a massive junior class, well, you still can only sign 25 2 years from now. So you want to be careful you don't get too far out of balance.
Let's pivot here for a second. Major League Baseball draft. We had Lamonis on this morning. Foscue and Westberg are gone. There's some talk that Tanner Allen could be a fringe guy. Will you be monitoring? Maybe not so much today because those that are picked are gone for the most part, but tomorrow as far as Tanner Allen, and it looks like Rowdy Jordan's safe and possibly Josh Hatcher. What do you think there?
Yeah, I think Hatcher and Rowdy, based on what the information we've been able to gather, and I give Gene Swindell a lot of credit for basically the last 10 days. He's been on the phone with, contacts with, scouts and cross-checkers and things like that, just to kind of have an idea, And so, yeah, like you said, it's a done deal. Foscue and Westberg will likely go in the first round. There's a lot of talk to that JT Ginn could be, a back-end first round or a guy that gets one of those compensatory picks, And so if that happens, I think he's going to sign and go too. Kind of like a Jacob Lingram situation. I think he goes and just kind of rehabs for a year, and then he's back to where he was and probably ahead of that. But you got some signees like Blaze Jordan, of course, that everybody's going to be watching, and he's going to have a draft party. And I think if he gets drafted anywhere close to his asking price, he's a guy that will go. But outside of that, I think State's going to return a very, very, very talented roster, and I think most of the signing class will end up coming to school because it is just a 5-round. The Tanner Allen situation is he's kind of the X factor in the whole thing. He's a big left-handed bat. People say, well, he doesn't have a natural position. That's probably true. But those guys on the left-handed side that hit with a lot of power sometimes are difficult to find. And so he's a guy that we're watching. He's to me, getting him back is huge for State just because of the fact that he's a guy that's been to Omaha a couple times, and he still has 2 years of leverage. So he doesn't just have to come out this year and kind of hope for the best. But, yeah, that's the one that we're kind of watching that you just don't have a good feel one way or another.
We'll leave it there. Steve Robertson, genespage.com, 247 Sports on the Miller Lite guest line. Thanks, Steve. Have a good week. Appreciate it.
Take care.
All right, so Tanner Allen, you'll keep an eye on him tomorrow. As far as Mississippi State fans, they'd love to see him back out in the outfield and swinging that left-handed bat. And he looks like Chipper Jones's younger brother. Blake Scott, Bo Bounds on the Out of Bounds show, ESPN 1059 The Zone. Man, I have somebody from Miami calling me. Maybe that was our Florida Atlantic discussion from earlier. Now, I do like Tommy. I love this banter back and forth on our Mississippi Ag text line about Lane Kiffin. There are some Ole Miss fans who are like, there's no doubt. I mean, they have the utmost confidence that he's going to skyrocket up the recruiting.
Top 10, here we come.
No, maybe not that, but top 15, top 20. Again, I don't think the numbers work other than you'll have to steal a bunch of players from other teams. There are so many 4-star and 5-star kids already locked up.
Yeah.
So I think, and I may be wrong, to make the numbers work, Lane and his staff will have to go get, like, Florida, LSU, Georgia, Auburn, Alabama commitments to make this work.
The only way – I don't see them just flipping all these guys from all these different SEC and local area schools, whatever, you're going to get a little bit of that natural trickle down because Georgia, Tennessee, Alabama will decide it towards the end, hey, we can't take this kid or that kid who's still a 4-star.
Right.
You know, and that's the guy that
John Rice Plumlee.
Yeah.
Ole Miss stayed in the hunt. Georgia dropped him. Ole Miss got him. They've got a super talented dude.
So Kiffin's going to have to be that kind of, you know, again, we talked about, it's so funny. Whoever asked about the shark analogy, here it comes. We talked about there's different levels of sharks in the SEC. You're swimming with sharks, but Alabama, Georgia, they're the front sharks. Lane Kiffin's going to have to be the best at getting all those scraps off the front sharks over the next 2 seasons.
The expectations were through the roof when he walked in, recruiting-wise.
And nothing has happened. We're 7 months in
now,
and nothing.
You can make up a lot of ground. You can host a lot of kids in the fall.
Maybe.
I guess maybe in the – well, that's true. I don't know how that's going to look.
Hosting may be all different now with recruiting. That's going to be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I don't know how the COVID recruiting –
just bringing kids on. You're not going to have the 100 kids standing on the sideline before a game. That's just not going to happen, I don't think.
Oh, that's a good point. How will that look? Ole Miss host Auburn early?
Like where you're normally
allowed,
where you're normally allowed to bring 100 kids in, you're going to see like 20, 30.
So their big games hosting kids will be Auburn, Bama, Florida, and Mississippi State. Okay.
Man, that's tough. 1 and 3 on your big hosting weeks.
I'm expecting big things. We'll see. But Leach has kind of stole the headlines.
But I think
with the grad
so.
transfers.
Like Steve said,
he's been able to do it at places that are literally out in the, like Starkville's not out in the middle of nowhere. It's right in the heart of talent everywhere. And I'm talking about from small high schools to big high schools, whether you're talking about Noxubee County, Starkville, you know, some of the Columbus area, Metro. I mean, it's an hour and 40 minutes from here. Pullman, Washington, it could be the worst job in Power 5.
Yeah, because of where it is. I mean, and Lubbock, it takes 3 bus rides, a wagon train, and a hike to just find where Lubbock, Texas is.
Yeah.
So, and that's where I'm from, so I understand how bad it is.
Well, you lived there for like a year.
3 years, thank you very much. And I've been back a few times, so don't worry about it. It's terrible. My point is, it's obvious that Leach is finally recruiting not completely uphill the same way he was at Washington State and Texas Tech. And it's having immediate dividends.
Ronnie says Leach will do better in recruiting than you think. All right. There you go. That one's in the books, Blake. I still want to hear what I should get Blake for his birthday in a week and a half. Shoot us a text, 601-885-3776. Brought to you by the Mississippi Ag Canton and Pearl location for your next John Deere tractor. Hey, don't forget that the Y'all Lifestyle Shop is open all week in the township. Great gifts for Father's Day at the Y'all Lifestyle Shop in the township in Ridgeland. We will see you tomorrow.